We're going to be reacting to a very famous politician leader who's now passed on already, but his name is Lee Kuan Yew. He gave a speech to Congress in the US, which is very rare. I cannot remember the last time an Asian leader was asked to speak to the entire parliament in the US, basically, right? And so that's how much people respect this guy even in the US. Too busy to find stock ideas? Check out Fiverr Pro to shortcut your research time and effort by 90%. 10% off link in the comments and description. And this is a very important video because it's, even though it's in 1985, we just found that it's so applicable even for today. It's almost like a rinse and repeat. Anyways, let's start.
Must also be prevented from rechanneling their energies towards expansion of their territories or their sphere of influence to get assured markets. Unfortunately, or perhaps fortunately for the rest of the world, the American Constitution enshrines a system of open government which does not allow its leaders to exercise such dominion over other countries and governments in the same way that leaders of totalitarian states can. Let us then not forget, Mr. Speaker, Mr. President, that protectionism and less trade means less growth for the developing countries.
Yeah, so I think this is the first key point. I think, two. One is that he thinks that America is a benign power, right? It doesn't impose his will in an intense manner like totalitarian states. Of course, some people will disagree, but I think for someone like Lee Kuan Yew, he's probably comparing it to especially the older communist countries plus colonialism. So when you compare it with these two, America looks very good. Of course, America also abuses its power every now and then. However, relatively, right? It's not. But the second point is that it's very true that developing countries rely on growth. And the reason developing countries rely on growth is because they do not have a domestic market that they can sell to. So they need to export. And America, as you'll see later on, is the absorber of all these exports.
This also means that debt burdens cannot be discharged. Defaults may be inevitable, with incalculable consequences for the international banking system. And even if the banks survive these upheavals, these developing countries will have to abandon all thoughts of liberalization towards plurality and more democratic freedoms. For severe and repressive government is the other side of austere or negative economic growth.
Yeah, so this is really important because whenever historically people have gone to war for resources and all that, and what the US did was say, hey, you know what, guys, don't fight over resources. Let's get rich by you selling to us. So the more you sell to us, the wealthier you become, the less you want to invade other people, pretty much. So that's why what he's saying is that if the US stops this international system, a lot of countries, right, that relied on exports now have lost their lifeline. So, for example, in a way, China or Malaysia and all that. So when we stop that, then there's a chance that these countries might become repressive. That's what he's trying to say.
An overstrong dollar has caused the huge trade deficits.
Strong dollar.
This is exactly like what Trump is saying, right? So it's very funny because in a way he's agreeing with Trump. Right.
Volatile and speculative foreign exchange market has exaggerated the factors working towards a strong dollar. The recent meeting in New York of the G5 finance ministers of the 5 largest industrial nations has given grounds for optimism that the overvalued dollar can be brought down by concerted action of G5 finance ministers and their central bankers. Congress may wish to stay their hand and allow these efforts time to work. Mr. Speaker, Mr. President, in case lobbyists for Japanese interests believe that they are going to be joined by someone from Singapore who ought to register his interests, let me add that I do not suggest that the Japanese should not be cajoled and, if necessary, coerced with all the powers at America's command to open up their markets.
Yeah. So you can see here, he seems to be suggesting that America should do everything they can to open up Japan's market. So in the 80s, Japan was the China of today, right? I believe at the peak, they reached like 60-something% of US economy. I think they did even overtake in GDP per capita terms. They were flooding markets with
cheap stuff, a lot of cheap stuff.
Cars, right? It's exactly very, very similar.
And then they also like put up some trade barriers.
And later on you will see. So far, it's weird because Lee Kuan Yew sounds a little bit like Trump, right?
Yeah.
Except the more trade equals growth and more jobs. But we're going to increase the speed.
Ultimately, and justly use all means to knock down Japanese barriers and obstacles to imports.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yep. There you go.
This is exactly what's happening with China.
There was a time in the 1950s and 60s when Americans looked with amusement and tolerance at the ingeniousness of Japanese obstacles to imports. But after Japan has become the second largest economic power as a result of open and fair trade, it is right that she should be made to abide by the rules that have brought her to such unprecedented prosperity.
If you just replace Japan and China, it's exactly the same thing, right?
It's like 40 years ago, we just changed country. One's Japan, one's China.
Yeah.
And the rest of Asia will cheer with joy. For then their goods will also get into Japan.
Yes.
Without going through an obstacle course. Let me add and declare my position that 95% of US goods enter Singapore duty-free and quota-free.
Still
and
true,
for 14 out of the last 15 years, the US has enjoyed trade surpluses with Singapore, and we are not complaining.
Still
but for America to put up tariffs and barriers to Japanese goods, instead of tearing down Japanese barriers to American exports, will hurt the rest of Asia twice over. First, by having the same tariffs and barriers to overcome in America. Second, by not being able to sell to Japan because the Japanese will be selling less to America. It is right to compel not only the Japanese but also the others to help the system function better. And if threatening retaliation for unequal access to markets is part of this process towards open and fair trade, then so be it. America has the right to...
Does that not sound like Trump?
Yeah, so the last resort is definitely you have to have some sort of like punishment, tariff, for those that is actually not being cooperative.
And actually in 2012, so a lot of people say like, why isn't Trump trying to go the diplomatic route first? Well, first of all, I think in 2018 he kind of half did that.
Yeah.
But more importantly, in 2012, I saw a clip of Obama actually, of course, complaining the same thing about China, but he's saying, we're gonna work with our friends and file a complaint, and we're gonna talk and all that, and that seems like it didn't work.
Yeah, they tried the peaceful discussion.
Yeah.
So right now, exactly like what Mr. Lee Kuan Yew is saying over here is that if let's say there's no cooperative manner, peaceful cooperative manner, then you can resort to this kind of
sounds like
ask those who have benefited from America's markets open up their own. Some countries, like those in the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, have supported the US initiative to have GATT begin a new round of discussions for lowering barriers to trade in goods and perhaps also to regularize trade in services. The answer to job losses is more, not less trade. America can upgrade her declining low value-added industries, or they will continue to decline whether America goes protectionist or not. Just as the ancient agricultural societies of pre-industrial China and Japan, with a self-sufficient subsistence economies based on buffalo and manpower, had to change with the advent of steam and the industrial age.
Yeah, so I think this is really good, right? So this is a fair criticism of America, and one that I've always held, which is they cannot bring back manufacturing jobs anymore. They just can't, right? Because even if they do bring it back, or rather if they bring some manufacturing back, it'll be all robots, right? Americans want to make money, right? So they're not going to hire people when they can hire robots.
Yeah, they cannot bring in every single manufacturing, only like certain some.
Yeah, and especially those critical to their own securities, like for example, robotics, pharmaceuticals, and maybe something energy related, right? These three are keys. But I think even if you bring these three back, you're not going to replace all the millions of jobs. I think they lost, what's the stat, like 5 million jobs over the past X years. You're not bringing those jobs back. And nor do these people want. And funny enough, there are actually a lot of people in China, they are on Douyin or TikTok, they're just saying, why is America wanting our jobs?
Yeah.
We've been slaving away so that you can buy these things for cheap, but you want our jobs. To them, it's like, what? Yeah, so I think this is the one part that, I mean, I don't know whether Trump knows about this, but he's certainly taking advantage of this like feeling that some Americans have. And actually, we'll put this here. We didn't put it in the slides, but there's this poll that they did on America, right? They asked both Republicans and Democrats. They say, okay, would it be good if America brought back these manufacturing jobs and have them, back here, right?
Yeah.
And 70 to 75%, Democrat or Republicans say, yeah, it's good to have manufacturing jobs. So then the second question they ask is, okay, would you work in the manufacturing job? 25% of people say yes. That is in a nutshell, right?
Yeah.
Why jobs are not going back to America. And I think that is the wrong motivation point for Trump. But the right one is, as what Lee Kuan Yew said, is bringing down the trade barriers. I think that's okay.
Rapid and profound change is the kind of world Americans have created by their inventiveness. And American legislators now have the awesome responsibility of deciding under what rules the peoples of so many different countries should undergo rapid changes in their ways of making a living and yet avoid violent conflicts. In every age, the leading power has to carry the burden of encouraging the peaceful acceptance of the status quo. This is done by punishing aggression and rewarding peaceful cooperation. The British carried this burden for over 100 years after they pioneered the Industrial Revolution. This responsibility passed to America after the Second World War. It is inherent in America's position as the preeminent economic, political, and military power to have to settle and to uphold the rules for orderly change and progress. And Americans are still leaders in a marathon for technological change and product innovation. American enterprise is blazing the trail into the microchip and computerized world of tomorrow.
Not anymore, but okay.
It is in the interest of peace and security that America upholds the rules of international conduct, which rewards peaceful cooperative behavior and punishes transgressions of the peace. A replay of the depression of the 1930s, which led to World War II, would be ruinous for all. All major powers in the West share this responsibility for not repeating this mistake. But America's is the primary responsibility, for she is the anchor economy of the free market economies of the world. In your hands, therefore, lie the future of the world. Thank you.
Yeah.
So that's basically the video that we're going to be reacting, and hopefully you guys, will at least learn something about why Trump is just doing like this.
And by the way, this is not the full speech. In order to get the full speech, you can just Google online the full transcript. I believe the Singapore National Archive Association has it. So,
yeah. Okay. So here are some of our takeaways over here. So number one, we know that tariff it is indeed bad, but it should only be done through the last resort. Obviously, just now MJD shared about Obama tried to did some sort of like peaceful negotiation, but that didn't work out well. So that's why even Lee Kuan Yew say, if let's say you cannot talk things out, then you have to fight, right? So this is actually a article or table by The Age, and they did mention that there's a few types of like tariff impact on different theoretical models. So obviously, the best one is actually have an optimal tariff theory. So optimal, basically, we don't straight away shoot like a very big number. So like, let's say maybe 10, 20% on every single country, I think that's still fine. But if let's say you're like Trump, who just give up like 50, 60, 100%, then probably it definitely like cause some sort of economic shock. So overall, it's actually a positive for a large country, and then everything is actually good. But I'm not going to talk about these two, crewmen and also milice, because basically it's a different kind of like impact. But the real world is basically definitely there'll be retaliation. Obviously, you can see like a lot of countries already are doing that. And the trade gains will actually be very short term, and the net wealth affair will be around like often loss. So this is actually what is happening with the real world at the moment. That's why you can see that Trump has been like trying to be more prudent, and he's like taking back some of what he say in terms of
he's
like,
taking back everything except the China one.
Yes, correct.
Although now with the exemptions, you can see that as some sort of being more soft. Right?
Yeah. So now we're actually going back to optimal tariff theory. So we hope that it stays the same, and then countries will also lower their trade barriers, as what Lee Kuan Yew say, and then there will be more trades going to happen. And then also you can see that China did not retaliate until actually the US go beyond 20%. Then they start to like throw numbers already.
Yeah.
Okay, the second one, obviously developing countries who suffer the most, because that is our bread and butter. We have to do a lot of trade in order for us to make profit and for us to use that money to grow our infrastructure, education, and all this.
But I would say in this specific scenario, assuming that there's some sort of status quo, I actually think that developing countries, of course, this is what Lee Kuan Yew said, but in this specific case, I actually think the developing countries will benefit if we do not put any tariffs. So, for example, in the case of the US, let's say they put even just 10% tariffs on our products. Yeah. I don't think that's big enough to stop demand in the US for some of our products. Maybe in some areas, yes, but it's not going to change much. And exactly. If we don't put any tariffs, it means we can pretty much continue selling to the US. Yeah. So we won't benefit. Then, of course, you have China plus one, China who wants to sell through us. I think we have to control that a little bit more now. But I don't think you can stop this momentum, right? There's so many goods that's going to flow through, not just Malaysia, but Vietnam, Cambodia, and all that as well. So I actually think right now we are more likely to benefit than to suffer. I mean, some will suffer, some, there's always a net effect. And I was actually quite encouraged to hear former MITI officer, or I can't remember his exact role, but Ong Kian Ming said that he thinks part of the package when we go to Trump to negotiate will be our rare earth minerals.
Which is what Trump wants.
Yes, that's what Trump wants. And that's what China has banned the US. So I think net we are going to benefit. I actually think the bigger challenge for us is how do we now deal with the incoming Chinese exports, right? We're going to get, I mean, as a consumer, I'm not going to complain, right? We're going to pay something valuable for peanuts. But locals might not like it. Like, for example, the BYD electric car is already, with certain
it's slightly,
discounts. It's slightly lower than the Proton mass, right? So then Proton might be asking, hey, our automobiles get this benefit, with excise duties. Why not our own national electric car? They might be asking that, right?
Yeah. Then US also might come in and say that, we're going to sell our Toyota or Honda at the cheaper prices. So then we have also another double whammy.
So the challenge for Malaysia is not the US, actually. I think it's China. Because it seems like Trump wants to remove, is open to negotiation. And I think Malaysia can give a good deal. But we'll see,
Yeah. So the third one we already mentioned is removing the trade barriers is key. You need to do a lot of trades so that you can answer to those job losses, especially for Malaysia. And last but not least, America is still key. 40 years ago, even now, they are still the one that is going to be driving innovation and also, make other developing country more prosperous with more trade.
Yeah.
So
mainly because they are the consumer of last resort. They have the largest consumer economy in the world. I think they are number one. And then from 2 to 9 combined is equal or slightly less than the whole of the US. So
So that's about it. And if you want to know more on the insights that we share inside our Fire Pro, we share a lot of news every single day. So our news,
and the interpretation of the news as well.
Correct, exactly. So, and then some people also will be thinking that there's some sort of question that they have inside the news update. Well, we will have our discussion over here in the main chat. So it's always active. If you guys got any question, you can ask inside here. So those who have not joined the Telegram group, make sure to join it. If you guys haven't joined Fire Pro, there's a 10% discount at the description and comments. So our April's performance will be slightly lower than this, but obviously we hope that things will start to look better as there's some sort of like form of negotiation between US and China. So if let's say it does happen, probably our FPM will be slightly maybe go back to around this level or hopefully slightly lower. Whereas for foreign global, this one is still positive, but it's lower a little bit. And we have been doing some shopping for Fire Pro Global as well as Malaysia for the past few days and weeks. Boring portfolio, this one is going to be impacted a lot because right now, I mean, there's a lot of like companies are actually trading at a very huge discount. So some of the companies, the institutions and even foreigners are actually hopping on those major discounts instead of being like slightly more defensive. So yeah, there's some sort of like a dip in terms of the portfolio. But anyhow, if you want to know what are the names that we bought recently, you can check out inside Fire Pro. And if you want to see how we do our write-ups, you want to see what are the contents inside SIB, we also share inside there, as well as the management notes. This is something new. We shared 3 free management notes inside this free sample for you guys to check out inside here. The links will be in the description and comments. So that's about it for today's video. See you guys next week.